A very good day to you. Welcome to the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube. Today on the show, I'm joined by Bester Caroline Chamboko, who is a midwife and nurse and also written a book called The Bag of Nerves to Success. Ma'am, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk about the title of the book, Bag of Nerves to Success. What inspired the title of the book?
It's really how I was. And when I look back at my life, I'm surprised. So I thought, let me put things in print, just to share my life and to inspire others. Because it's unusual that one can be successful when you are very nervous. I often hear people say that, oh, I get a bit nervous when I'm in front of people. Now, I wasn't like that. I was extremely nervous, not just a bit nervous. I was nervous to be extreme. So this had come about because of a challenging childhood. And yet I actually made it in life. So by writing the book, I'm trying to inspire other people that if there is anything that limits you from being the best of who you can be, it's possible to change. Like I've managed to change. And that's what I share in the book.
Now, ma'am, take us back to your childhood growth, your upbringing as a child. You speak about difficult times as a child growing up. Take us back then to those days.
Why it was difficult, my father died when I was only 2 years old. So for survival, my mother had to go to Harare to work. She worked as a domestic worker. And so I was looked after by an aunt, my mother's eldest sister. And she was fine, but when she got divorced, we went back to their maiden home. And an uncle didn't really look after us well. We were not cared for like other children. I worked extremely hard. It was hard. So from that, because I saw that other children are treated differently from me, and I'm working harder than any other child in the village, I developed beliefs that other people are better than me, and that I'm not good enough. And what made things worse for me was that my relatives from my father's side, there was an agreement. They were supposed to retrieve us, as it were, after paying £5. I don't know
when was that.
This was I was born in 1952. This was back then in the mid-50s. Yeah. So they were supposed to pay £5 so that we could. So I was not comfortable in that homestead. With my mother's relatives. So I had hopes that our relatives from my mother's side would, when we turned 5 years, I was with my sister, an older sister, that they would pay I was going to say $5, I think it was pounds then, and then take us to that. So that was a kind of a ray of hope for me. But it didn't happen. So when that didn't happen and we had to stay in that village, I felt like I was unwanted, because if I was wanted, I would have been taken away by. So I felt unwanted. So all that, how it affected me, that's how I developed extreme nerves. Because I'm not good enough, and my nerves, if I am someone who would like shake, my voice would shake, my hands would shake, whatever I'm holding would shake, sweat would pour down my. So for me to move from that and to become comfortable to speak in front of you, it's huge. And so I write the book to just encourage other people that nerves was an example for me. It could be other challenges. And I'm saying that, let's say, first of all, be into accepting mode, recognizing whatever limits us, whatever challenges. And then let's make a point of doing something about it, because we can help ourselves. And out there's help. Yeah. So I used whatever opportunities I found to change. I was aware that I was uncomfortable, and I changed. So I encourage other people to just look at their own individual situations. Yeah. If there are challenges anywhere, it's possible to change.
Let's go back to now growing up in a small Chiwotaroa village.
Yes.
And now being a nurse. What inspired? We will say childhood memories inspired you to become a nurse?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that the childhood experiences is what affected me to become so nervous. Otherwise, when it comes to the question of becoming a nurse, I just really feel that it was like a calling for me. I never planned. It's like I had other thoughts, particularly influenced by the nervousness. I never believed I could be a nurse because I was too nervous to speak to people. So, as I say, it's like things simply happened. Like I would say that, and I do explain that in the book, there have been a lot of misfortunes in my life. Even when I look back at that childhood, I'm a person that has no regrets. I don't begrudge anybody for what happened. I am comfortable. I feel as if it was a necessary part of my life for me, because the experiences of childhood inspired me to be very hardworking. And that hard work has helped me to get to where I am. As for becoming a nurse, because I was too nervous, even at school, I actually qualified for a bursary, but I was too nervous to claim it. So, and I had even qualified. I had a place at St. Ignatius to go for Form 5, Form 6. I couldn't go because I had no money. Yet the bursary had been there but unclaimed. So what became the turning point, which again is in the book, coming from our rural areas, we used to have to work hard to get pocket money to go to school with. And when we came back, when it was time to after the Form 4 to pick up St. Ignatius, the idea, we had been beguiled. So I found myself with absolutely nothing. No money, no clothes. So what did I do? I picked up my certificate. Fortunately, the grades were good. Went to Ministry of Health in Causeway then, Harare. And with my certificate, I had never applied for nursing. I was just pushed by events, negative events. So they looked at my certificate with good passes. They took me on the first intake. So there was no plan, in other words. But yet the interesting bit, because I just didn't believe I could be a nurse, I could talk to people. Yet when I joined nursing, I never one day regretted. That's where I should have been. And yet there had been no plan.
So in 1971, you start doing nursing and becoming a midwife. Let's talk about the state of healthcare back then. How was it like as you compare to now, 2023?
Actually, it wasn't that bad, because what we hear now, it's a bit distressing when you think of the numbers that have grown and the facilities, they are so run down. It's really sad. But on the other angle as well, I look back and know that general health for the general population has actually changed negatively. An example is in the early 70s, there were not so many African people, us, with like heart conditions. We used to be put in transport to go to United Blaue hospitals to see white people with heart conditions like coronary heart disease and so forth. And yet now, when you go to Mpilo, there is no shortage of such diseases anymore. So things have really changed negatively. And I believe that we can put this down to the diet. Picking up Western diets and so forth. Too much sugars, too many processed foods and so forth. Because basically when it comes to health, we can say that you are what you eat. So what we eat is so important. Unfortunately, sometimes when people think they can now afford this and that, back then we didn't afford stuff. When we grew up, it's like Christmas was the time when we would have so much food, but any other time, we went back to basics. There's mostly natural food. But I think processed foods have just worsened our situation. Also then worsens the numbers that are needing medical care. Never mind that we seem to be failing to channel funds appropriately to benefit the masses in terms of health. It's a key issue, but it's like your heart bleeds when you go to Mpilo, places like Mpilo, and see what is going on.
But as a healthcare practitioner, now looking at the modern day youth, we saw last week a few stories about the issue of drug abuse in Bulawayo from youths. What is the word of advice we can give to young people in terms of in terms of abstaining from those things, which are drugs and substance abuse?
I think I'll go back to the parents as well, the way we raise our children, so that we also give a good example to the young people. And I would say that, we have to look at the reasons why people get that way. So is it like broken families? Is it poor guidance? But as a parent, I will also say at the same time that children can be their own, so I would be advising that if they've got issues, because usually it's issues that are concerning them, that lead them to drug abuse or misuse. So if there are problems, again, back to what I said earlier, it's a problem. Like mine was nervousness. Theirs is drug misuse. So they should, I would encourage them to recognize that this is a problem and seek help. Because we must look at why they are doing that and support them accordingly.
Now, on your book, now, if you look at Zimbabwe now, there's no nuclear family, there's no mother, no father. Children are raising themselves. The young people are breadwinners now at home. In your book, do touch about the issues of children raising themselves and what can be done, what are the effects of children raising themselves in this modern day era where parents go out of the country to look for money.
I think that's very sad to look at, because I think as a people, we need to look at our priorities, so that we are not prioritizing material things that much. As a person that has lived in the United Kingdom for some years, I think people, when we go overseas, we must have our plans and aims and objectives, and so that our children should really not suffer because of our decisions. So there is nothing to replace a parent when it comes to the raising of children. So I think it's trying to encourage everybody to really just look at their priorities and prioritize our children, raising them as best we can.
So as Zimbabwean moving from Zimbabwe going to the United Kingdom, how was life there? Some settling down there. How was life there, and what can we borrow there from the healthcare side, bringing it back to Zimbabwe? Well, the planning from the top, the government planning, they do prioritize health very much. Like in the United Kingdom, as an example, there is the National Health Service, so that healthcare is free for people. And so we could learn from that to channel more funds, more money into health. So that, because here, we are aware of people dying because they didn't have money for an ambulance, for example, which is really sad. That should not be happening. Life is critical. We should look at it like that. Right. You are turning 71 years this year. What's the secret ingredient for keeping health, and what's the secret ingredient that you have been using for 71 years that you can share with the viewers at home?
Yes, I would like to say I've enjoyed good health. And at 71, I also like to emphasize that I actually have no medical condition to talk of at all. I don't take any medication, and not even paracetamol for myself.
So what's the secret ingredient that you have?
So generally, I can touch on at least 3 things. Number one, like I said earlier, you are what you eat. I'm very careful what I consume. I try to avoid the processed foods as much as possible. Let's stick with natural food as far as we can. Because when we go for processed foods, and also with the processed foods, we must limit our sugar intake. There's the department that we call the immune system. That's like our natural self-defense. Things like sugar, processed foods actually dampen our natural self-defense. And then we get sick, we get ill from time to time. When you are ill, obviously, you are going to look older than you would otherwise have done. Yeah. So you are what you eat. Let's try and limit processed foods and avoid or limit sugars and anything that contains sugar. Then the second arm, when we are under stress, we also look older. So I have had a lot of negative experiences. There are not many people who can tell me that, oh, you are comfortable because you don't have problems. I have had lots of problems in my life. But it's getting to a point where I've learned to accept what issues they come up in my life, and then without judging anything. And because if you are not judging negative things, then you can be comfortable. There are things that are going to happen in life that you cannot change, that you have no control over. But we certainly have control over how we react. So I live a stress-free life. And as I emphasize, it's not like there are no problems, but it's how I cope. And so without stress, life can be good. And I am emphasizing that it's not like we should think that I am tense because so much has happened to me. I am saying that even in my book, I do say that so much also negative stuff happened to me. But we can still choose. That's why I do run workshops to help people to be comfortable regardless of circumstances. My brand, I call it the happiness option. I do workshops like that, like this. In 2 weeks' time, on the 18th of this month, I've got one such workshop. So it's a stress-free living. Then also, it's important to exercise. Okay, because as examples, even though I drive 2 cars, I can park my cars and actually walk to work. But I laugh because as I do that, many people know me in Bulawayo. So many cars actually stop to give me a lift. And of course I decline. And I think of one particular day when this guy was so determined. He stopped there and he was not leaving me on the, he thought. So because he said, oh, you don't have to pay anything. You can come through, jump in. So he must have thought perhaps I didn't have bus fare. So it's just an example of exercising. Like when I get to the hospital, which is where I work, my own hospital, when I go to pay bills in town, I always walk. So those are ways just to put in exercise in my life so that if we have got a car, we shouldn't be in a car all the time. And I also regularly play squash. So that keeps me fit.
Yeah, you see, nice. So speaking of the hospital, it was established in 1985. Take us to a journey in terms of opening your own hospital and what are the services that we offer there as someone who's owning that hospital.
Okay, that's an interesting question. Again, that's why I say sometimes my life is as if I'm Christian. Yeah. It's as if some almighty power has directed me into doing what has happened. Because opening 1985, again, it was unfortunate circumstances that led me to that. I'd worked in the United Kingdom. I came back here to Zimbabwe in 1982. Beginning of 1982, I started working at Impilo as a midwifery tutor. And I had a lot of training behind me, a lot of experience. And I enjoyed my work. So I felt I was doing well. But there were jealousies. It's amazing because I even put it in the book. As an example, it came to a point where, because when students complimented me, Miss Chamboko, we are learning so much. Thank you so much. If I got compliments like that, I had a colleague who would take offense. And you get to a point where you say, good morning, and the colleague doesn't answer you. And she's got support because it was a question of who you know as well. So she would have support like, I'm called to go and answer at administration. The matron is asking me, why are you behaving? Because I'm being accused of being insubordinate when people have complimented me. So I give this example to the matron. But the matron, if I say good morning to a colleague and they don't answer, where do you start with communication? Do you know what? Can you guess what her answer was? Not all mornings are good.
Yeah.
It's in the book. So with such discomfort, because also there was a time when I'd been on leave, I come back from leave, it's in the book. I come back from leave, I find there's blood on my desk. That, yes, I can see you are shocked as well. That shocked me very much. And everybody came to see, express their surprise. And the matron in maternity kindly said to me, don't touch that blood. I'll do the cleaning. So with the things like that happening in my life, I felt I had no option but to leave. It was a real push. I mean, when you see blood, you would stay with that because it's like, get away. So when they didn't dismiss me as such, in fact, they transferred me to Mpilo to say that you are not getting on with your colleague. And my colleague had started in Mpilo like 4 months before me. So it was like I was the junior person going to teach in Mashingo. Now Mashingo was training state-certified midwives and rather than state-registered nurses, which is a grade up. Yep. So I didn't know how I was going to lower my level because I had also taught midwifery in the United Kingdom. And it's such a pity that in UK they were desperate for staff. They were encouraging me to stay on because we have shortage of midwifery tutors. But I chosen to come and help at home because I knew there was also a shortage in Zimbabwe. But the way we looked after ourselves. So I was advised to go to Mashingo so I would lose my benefits and resign resign. And so with that, this is what encouraged me to open my own facilities. There were actually doctors, a lot of people who were around us were seeing what was going on, the unfairness on me. Even though the top brass wasn't. So I had also advice from doctors that were saying, hey, if people are hating you for what you can do, why don't you go and do that for yourself? And of course, it made sense. And I had a lot of support because, like, when I went to Family Planning Council, as I prepared myself for opening my own hospital, it was a clinic then. And I remember the shock in this person that was in charge of Family Planning Council because I said, can you train me on family planning so I can, as I prepare, you want to leave? So I said, yes, I have to. And her remark was, if you leave, who's going to teach the students? So I said, I laughed because I said, you know I'm not the only tutor there. You know this. And she said to me, but when your students come to us on secondment, they tell us who is teaching them. So if you leave, what's going to happen? So I said, I have no choice. So those are the circumstances that encouraged me to open. But it's as if, again, back to like some almighty force had helped me along the way. Because when I came from UK, I was one of those that were selected to go on training, week-long training when we introduced the expanded program on immunizations for Zimbabwe. So I was well-versed on immunizations for children. Mm-hmm. So when we were there, this was in Esgodin for a week. So we were in the same group with the chief nursing officer for Blair City Health Department. So they got to know me. So when I wanted to open my clinic, it was as if I had been prepared. Oh. So I got a lot of support, especially from the then chief nursing officer who was called Miss Easton. I've since tried to find her because she was massive in helping me. Because typical of Zimbabwean people, and I wish we would change this because we tend to be jealousy when other people are doing something that seems better. Instead of being jealousy, it would make sense to actually learn from someone who may be doing something. So anyway, there were a lot of nurses who were actually saying that you should close it down. She has opened a private clinic and she's charging money. It was only $2 I was charging, but they were clamoring for my closure because of the $2.
So at what point, talking about childhood memories, growing up, the nerves, this low self-esteem, then later on you do nursing, go to Mpilo again now, face more challenges again. Now open your own place again, face more challenges. So at what point is the turnaround of these? How do you overcome these nerves and also low self-esteem and also the challenge that you're facing?
Okay, so interesting question, because when I went overseas, I first went overseas in 1975. That's when I went overseas. And my reason for going overseas had been, I think I was a strange character. That's why I find the book quite interesting, because it's like I could blow hot and cold. So even though I was so nervous, the one thing that also helped me was that the brain was there. The Almighty God had given me a good brain. So when I finished a training in 1974 from Pilo Hospital, I wanted challenges. And so I went to work at a mission hospital in Lupane. So when it came to the time for me to, because in Lupane we had a lot of challenges, I could be in charge of the hospital when the doctor regularly came to town, for example. And we used to do outreaches. So we thought I desperately needed midwifery training. So, but when I applied for midwifery training, I was told that they are giving priority to government employees. That rigidity, which is not useful, without common sense, in my opinion. So, so when they said that, I lost my temper at some point. So again, I went to Ministry of Health and really virtually told them off. But how can they not train me, who is needing midwifery training, working in a rural Zimbabwe, and they are training nurses from medical wards, like from Pilo Medical Ward. And then after midwifery training, they will go back to the medical ward. It didn't make sense to me. So as I say, I kind of, when I was challenged, when I've been challenged, it's like even my daughters tell me that, Mommy, when you are challenged, you are at your best. Because I think then that shifts the focus from myself and I focus on the challenge. And that's how I manage it. So having behaved so badly, in my opinion, at Ministry of Health, I knew after that they were not going to take me. That is what encouraged me to find a place overseas and for midwifery training. Because in my mind, I was kind of a strong character that if I want something and I feel something is good, I just never give up on a good idea. So I felt it was a good idea to do midwifery training. There are no training me in Zimbabwe, I go overseas. And in no time I was accepted overseas. That's how I went and did midwifery training. And then further to that, I felt that I wanted to be the best of who I could be. And I knew I'd nerves, isn't it? Like you said. So I think the useful bit for me was the acceptance. And I do emphasize that if we have challenges, let's accept. And then so we can comfortably do something about them. So knowing that I had that problem, when I found it was called autopsychology, it was like a correspondence course that I did to improve how I was. And I still remember exercises like, I can and I will, I can and I will. So that helped me to improve. So I was, then when I went for midwifery tutor training, that was a challenge because now, standing in front of white nurses teaching them midwifery with my nerves and a Zimbabwean accent, I explained that in the book. It's quite interesting. The journey. Yes. So I remember that when students would say, I beg yours, because of it's the combination of nerves and the accent, Zimbabwean accent, I beg yours. So I didn't like that at all. So I made up my mind that from today henceforth, I'm going to speak clearly and look at them so that no one is going to be saying, I beg yours again. So that was a self-challenge and it worked really well. But then as I could see that I'm getting less, I beg yours and so forth, that was building on my self-confidence. And so when coming back, I had improved, but I was not my best version. It was not until I actually had a disabled, again, going to the effect of misfortunes leading me somewhere useful. So I've had 3 daughters in my life, raised them as a single parent. And my last daughter, Carol, she's got severe learning disability. So she's disabled. So while I was overseas, then I was wanting to, I left no stone unturned for my daughter. I was looking for everything that could help me to help her. So I came across the Option Institute. It was the Sunrise, because she was also severely autistic. Then I came across Sunrise program to help with autism. This was something that had been created in the United States. So I got up information, and in no time I was in the United States, Massachusetts, to learn. Then interestingly, because when I had my daughter, I got into depression. So I kind of slipped backwards a bit. I got very depressed because I would say think of God, why me, this disabled daughter? And somehow I blamed myself as if I had actually caused their problems. This is how it was coming to me. And with the depression, I wouldn't sleep, and therefore everything got worse for me. But when I went to Massachusetts, it's an international training and learning center. So we were there with the parents from all over the world. We're in a room with like over 100 parents of us. And then I looked at everybody and I was asking myself, if I'm blaming myself for my daughter's problems, am I blaming all these people for their challenges of their children? So I learned through the option process. It's a way of looking at life very differently. We look at beliefs. It's like whatever we do, our reactions and our feelings and behaviors actually come from our beliefs. So there I learned, it was like me peeling an onion layer by layer to understand myself. Because the correspondence course that I mentioned earlier, it kind of helped me, but it was like a quick patch up. Now option process was like the real thing to help me to understand. And with understanding, because when you understand your beliefs, that's how you can change what you may not be comfortable with, the feelings and the whatever you do, the behaviors. So then that was the ultimate for me. I then learned to redesign myself to become the best version of myself. Like now I'm the woman that I want to be.
For just joining us, this is the Breakfast Club. My name is Brighton Ncube, and my guest this morning is Bester Caroline Chamboko. They're unpacking their book, A Bag of Nerves to Success. Now, let's look about the issue of depression. Suppose someone is watching the show this morning and saying, I'm depressed, I'm going through a lot, I don't have money, I'm not employed. What can you say to them? What are the words of motivation you can share with them? And also, what nuggets are there in the book that you can share with them?
There is information in there because I do share how I dealt with my depression. So, and also to mention that I do run workshops to help people. Because back to the example of me thinking that, God, why me? You can look at yourself, and it's very important, I'll keep mentioning this, to accept where we are. And then when you have accepted where you are, then you can seek help. Practically in the community, this help could come, let's say, from perhaps if you're a church goer, it could be your priest that can help you. It could be the family setup. But beyond that, there are also professional people that can help with mental health issues. And I am a qualified option process mentor or a counselor. So I do help in that regard as well. As I say, I do run workshops on a regular basis. So apart from me, as I said, there are these other avenues, but people should seek help and not sit and stay in depression. They want to accept it's a challenge, but it can certainly be helped.
So lastly, in closing, where can people get in touch with you and how can they buy the book from you?
They can get the book from Maternal and Child Healthcare Center. That's my hospital in Bulawayo. We are along Josiah Tongogara between 11 and 12th Avenues. And the telephone numbers 02922 76838. My mobile number 0777 065545.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your time this morning, joining us on the Breakfast Club. Thank you so much for being an inspiration and continue telling your story and also unpacking these issues and also helping our community. Thank you so much for your time, ma'am.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
Well, there we have it. I was joined by Bester Caroline Chamboko. They're unpacking her book that she wrote now, A Bag of Nerves to Success. So get in touch with her and get the book. Please do enjoy the show.